How would you describe your teaching style?
My teaching style is, I describe it as exploratory. As my the last book that I published, the Psychophysical Lab, I think, you have to approach the practice like a lab. And because it's a place that you really study. You come to study. It's not a workout, just to work the body. You use the body, but you observe the connection between the body and the mind and the breath. And you have to try out different options and different variations in order to compare and study. So this, I encourage my students always to explore, not to go, by dogma, but to try out really everything on their own. Yeah, this is how I would describe it. Well, of course, not for beginners, but I don't teach beginners so much anymore. So for more, mature practitioner, I think they should adapt, not to have a mechanical or closed view, but to have creative, innovative, and really like to play with the practice.
I love that you mentioned play. I think there's such a beauty to the practice, and there is such an opportunity to play and to really experience and tap into the joy of what this practice can offer us. And I think that really does come through in your work, in your books that you've shared. It's and even with having the opportunity to study with you when you came to Canada in 2018. I can't believe it's been 2 years already.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of the
one of the things that we missed is that I should have gone last month. To Calgary again.
I know. Well, I know, but
I hope next year.
Yeah, I think we will plan for next year as well, and it's wonderful that people are able to experience the online teaching with you. So I think that will also be quite an opportunity for students. Yeah. Why did you write your many books? And could you also talk a little bit about your new book that's coming out?
Okay, so my first book actually started as my personal notes. And then, because my notes when I write by hand are not so organized. And when I wanted to prepare for a class or workshop, I had to go over all my notebooks, and always a problem. So I decided it's time to organize it in a more, organized manner, and to have also photos so I can remember. And then it started to be like a booklet that I thought, okay, if it is helpful for me, maybe it could be helpful for other teachers. So I wrote it in Hebrew first, the language here in Israel, and I printed 300 copies, and it was sold out just like this. And initially, I didn't think it would be such a success, but then people started to tell me, you have to do it in English, you have to do it in English. And one teacher took it to the United States and the book in Hebrew, and she gave some workshop working with a chair, and she came back and she told me, Eyal, you must have it in English. So then I decided, well, I have to translate it. And this is how A Chair for Yoga came. And then when A Chair for Yoga was published, and it was really such a, success, because many people from all corners of the world appreciated it, and I got so many beautiful feedbacks. And it really, fills my heart with joy that my modest work, can help so many people, and, all the reactions that I got. And then I thought, okay, I should continue this work and give, the community more tools. And I combine, I think, my, 40 years of experience in yoga. Well, 35 Iyengar Yoga, but 40 years yoga. And my writing ability, because I used to work, I have a PhD in computer science, and I used to work in the Open University in Israel to write books about computer science, but it does give you a skill of writing. So I think many people thought that my books are, like precise, organized, and this I think come from the computer science side. So I think, yeah, I hope I have something to offer to the yoga community, specifically Iyengar Yoga community, but also other practitioners. So I continue, props for yoga, 1, 2, 3, and I hope 4 will come, which should be about backbends. And and about the new book. So as I said, the chair for yoga was really, and it is still my bestseller from all the books. There's something, very wide appealing in this book, and not only for Iyengar Yoga, probably. And since then, of course, I continue to practice and to play with the chair. And I found many new variations. And also, people, start to call me the chairman because
Yes. Jawahar calls you the chairman.
the chairman, yes. So I became like a chair expert. So a lot of people contributed the ideas, which of course I try out and then I try with my students and so on. And it was accumulated to justify a new book. And the new book is really double, the number. It includes all the variation in the original chair for yoga, but it doubles it. And also a chair for yoga, is a limited budget. So the photos are not so professional and the editing is not. So now I took all the photos. There are about 600 photos or even more. And design is a little bit improved and so on. And I'm really excited because I think tomorrow it will go to print.
Oh.
And in 2 weeks, I'll have the copies and we'll be able to spread them.
Yeah, wow, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And what was your inspiration for writing the most recent book, the Psychophysical Lab?
Okay, so as I said, I always mention the class. Actually, it's Prashanji, always talk about yoga practice as a lab. And I have mentioned it in classes, and I have one student, Ohad Nachtomi, which is professor of philosophy. So, the philosophy people, they always ask questions. Yeah. So after a class, he used to come to me, okay, it's a lab, but what kind of a lab? What do we study in a lab? And then we started to discuss, and he told me, okay, we need to write a book about it because it's a very interesting question. And initially, I was hesitating because I really wanted to continue with the series of props for yoga. But then, we started to discuss and ignite my interest. And I think really the problem of connection between body and mind in the Western tradition is problematic, is very problematic because there is dualistic approach. And in yoga, we see that, body and mind are so intimately connected. So I think it's a very interesting subject to use yoga to explore these connections between body and mind. And he wrote the part of the philosophy. There's a whole chapter about the history of this mind-body problem in philosophy, because it's, it's one of the major problems in philosophy. And many philosophers think that it cannot be solved. Principally, it cannot be solved. Yeah. But we think yoga offers, well, maybe if not solution, but it can dissolve the problem, because we offer, actually we suggest that the problem is because of wrong thinking and wrong terminology about the problem. So if you change your view, the problem like dissolves. So I think it was very, I enjoyed this project. It was very interesting.
It was, I remember you sharing you're sharing a little bit about your book the last time that you were in Canada, and a lot of people were quite intrigued with that. And so when we got copies into the studio, they flew off the shelves, and a lot of people really appreciated it. as well, because it does tap into something that is not always really discussed, and it's not usually discussed for, I think, beginners as well. It's something that usually you start to encounter as you mature in the practice. So it's nice to have that, and it's accessible for beginners or anyone who's beginning the practice, or perhaps people who are just interested in the philosophy of it. You've kind of got it all in there, which is really
It combine a practical part, explorations, with philosophy, the chapter that Ohad wrote, and then a discussion, which is, I think, very rarely, I don't know any book that discuss the benefits of yoga. It's, well, chapter 2 of the book is like a long answer to the question, why yoga is good. What does yoga, what does yoga do for you? In terms of body and mind, it's not only, of course, it's good for the body. It's a very good system to keeping your health, immune system, and so on, but also for your mind. So there is a discussion of a lot of, things that you get from practicing yoga. We are together with Ohad now. We are working about a new book, which will be Yoga in Nature.
Oh.
Because I like to practice in the beach. I live near the beach, Mediterranean beach, and I practice mostly in the summer, which in Israel it's like 7 or 8 months. Yeah. I practice on the beach in the morning, early in the morning, like 6 o'clock until 8 or 9 a.m. And Ohad also followed me and he's my student already 15 years, so he started to go also to the beach to practice. And then I found many ways to use the sand as a prop. For example, for Sarvangasana, you need like a platform. So what I do in the sand, I make a little pit in the sand, and the head is lower than the shoulders. And there are many, many ways to use the sand. And then we decided also, because sometimes we practice in the desert, so there will be 3 chapters: practice on the beach, practice in the forest, and practice in the mountains.
Oh, beautiful!
And it will be more like an album, because there will be many nice color photos. So it will be a little bit different than my previous books.
That's beautiful, Eyal. That's really beautiful. And why do you enjoy so much practicing within nature? Is there a different quality for you in your experience practicing in nature as opposed to?
Yeah, definitely. It's something really, it's hard to explain why, but when I go in the morning to the beach and I just take a swim in the water and then I go out, I really connect to the practice immediately. Which, sometimes in the morning when I start in the studio, it takes me like half an hour to really get into the practice, to really, absorb in the practice. And in the beach, it's immediate. And also, it seems like naturally, the asanas become effortlessly. I don't know how to explain, why is it, but maybe the energy, from the elements of nature.
Yeah, Mother Nature's
yes.
holding you for your practice.
The water, the wind, the sand, everything.
Yeah.
Somehow the practice flows so beautifully and without effort. So, Prayatna Shaitilya, when the asana becomes perfect, when the effort to perform it becomes effortless. This I experience at the beach mostly, and also in the studio, of course, but in the beach it comes very easily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. What do you love about yoga, and what is your passion with this subject?
Okay, first of all, yoga gives a lot of joy. And I think everybody that practicing yoga can feel the joy and the peace that you get after the practice. And what is so beautiful about yoga is that no matter in what mood you start to practice, if you bring yourself to practice, and after, an hour and a half or 2 hours of session, you feel completely different. And it doesn't matter if you start with low energy or with a bad mood or even with agitation or anything. When you finish, you're always in a sattvic, relaxed, peaceful. So this is, I think, very powerful about yoga. And also yoga gives you a chance to study yourself, to observe yourself, especially self-practice, because then you can observe all your tendencies, all, the games of the mind, all the excuses or the thing that comes in the mind because you're alone, you're quiet in your practice, and you can watch everything, the whole scene of what happens inside you. And yeah, I think you learn a lot from it. And if you ask about my passion, I would say that my passion is that everybody will appreciate and enjoy yoga. That's why I'm teaching yoga, because I think it's such a wonderful thing. And I really, I see so many people that are not practicing, and I feel pity for them because I think they miss something very valuable for their life. And I think, even people with, they have discipline, they go for different kind of sports like cycling, which are good. I'm not saying they're not good, but if you already have this discipline and energy, why don't invest it in something that will give you something more for your soul, not only for your muscles? So this is my, I think, I try to spread the yoga. I mean, of course, I'm not a missioner. I teach only people that come to me. I don't run out of after people to try to convince them, but best of my efforts, I try to spread the yoga as much as possible. And I think in this, I continue the work of my guru, B.K. Iyengar, because he was also very passionate about spreading yoga. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he really was. No, we're so thankful. How did you get into yoga? You said that you had you've done 35 years of Iyengar Yoga, but it was 5 years a different style of yoga.
Yeah, it was Shivananda. I don't know, yoga came to me actually since I was a child. I remember somehow I was fascinated about the stories, about the yogis and the wonderful things that yogis can do. And when we studied the subject of India, when I was in 4th grade, I was 10 years old, I was already did Shirshasana. I didn't know it was Shirshasana, it was just headstand. With my legs in Padmasana, in lotus pose. So I have some photos that I'm in Indian customs, and I'm doing some yoga posture as a kid. So this was always somehow in my mind. I don't know why, maybe previous incarnation or anything. But I always knew that I want to try it, to study it. So when I was released from the army in Israel, it is compulsory. So I did my army service, and when I finished, I was immediately looking for yoga teacher. And I was in Jerusalem at the time. I was a student in the Hebrew University after the army. And I found Shivananda teachers. I didn't know anything about yoga, about different method, and this was 1978, so there was yoga was not so known in the West, and especially in Israel was not. So I just started, and I enjoyed it, I like it. And after 4 years, in 82, I went to a TTC, teacher training of Shivananda. And then there was a lady that spoke about, she said, there is a best teacher in Israel, is in Jerusalem. And she gave her name. So this teacher training was a retreat of 1 month. So when I came back to Jerusalem, immediately I was looking for her, and she was a Iyengar Yoga teacher, the first one in Israel. So I started to study with her and appreciate the method. And so I shifted and started to study Iyengar. And in 1988, I first time went to Pune to study directly under Guruji and of course Prashantji and Gitaji.
Yeah, wow.
So
and then the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. Well,
Is there anything else that that you'd like to discuss, Eyal, about the upcoming online workshop, or anything else that you think that we should discuss or have a convo about?
No, I think just, in this pandemic, in these difficult times, we really saw that yoga has, a lot to offer for us, because I think if you practice yoga, you're much more immune, the immune system strengthened. And I think it's, so many people, if they practice more yoga, I think the coronavirus would not spread so much, because you have the inner resistance to the virus. So I don't know, it depends on what the audience will want. We can do something, it depends on how severe will be the pandemic in that time in Alberta. Yeah, so this we'll see when the time comes.
I think I do think there's there's a lot of areas that have opened up yet, and so the pandemic it's starting to feel like, I don't want to say that it feels like a distant, or I shouldn't say distance, but like a close sort of soon to be distant memory. But there's a lot of residual effects that I think and latent effects that are within us that we may not realize from the pandemic. A lot of physiological and psychological disturbances for some people, I think, have really started to surface. More so even perhaps now that things are starting to open up and things are starting to get back to normal. And so how would you say that yoga would help with that?
I think that for this time, when we are out of the the crisis, I think it's good to start with more energized poses, and then to finish with something more restorative to balance. And of course, inversions are must, because they are so good. And as always, I think I'll do, my style of teaching is to explore the asanas. But definitely will include inversions and finish with more restorative, relaxing, because this, opening the body and have a deep rest is very important. It's something that we forgot to. We don't know how to rest. We're so busy. And even in meditation, I think when you sit in meditation, you don't rest as deep as in restorative Iyengar Yoga postures, because when you open the body with a support, like with a bolster, or the Viparita Dandasana bench or Setu Bandha, the mind can come in the body and rest, and this is very helpful, I think, especially to go deep into yourself and to do the healing that maybe is needed.
Yeah, and I think the observation, like you were speaking of before, when you get into those, you get into a posture where you can just absorb, and you're fully absorbed, and you can watch and observe to see what's happening, the vrittis and what's going on. Even that, I think, is really helpful, because it allows you to tap into who yourself, what's going on, what's happening inside of there. And I think it's an opportunity to be able to step back and go, okay, watching what's happening, and not so much attachment to
without identifying so much with your thinking, but just watching your thinking. This is something.
Well, thank you very much, Eyal. Really appreciate
Thank you so much.